Hi, my name is Katja Vogt and I teach philosophy at Columbia University.
Hi, my name is Jens Haas and I'm a photographer and artist.
One thing that really stands out to me in terms of, how these vampires hide, because they need to get their blood, so they are these super sophisticated vampires. They no longer bite people, or they call that a 15th century thing, which of course they have left behind a long time ago. So they have these deals with doctors and hospitals, and they go there and they get blood there. But wherever they go, they are dressed in the colors of the background that they move through. So they are like these chameleons. They are kind of hiding in plain sight by just blending into the background. And his world is black and dark blue and so on. And her world is kind of white and yellowish and sand colors. But then, for example, when he always goes to the hospital to get blood, and then he dresses in white and blue, and as it were precisely the kind of arrangement of the colors that the walls behind him have. So you have this theme of, how do you get through the world without being seen, or by just sort of being in your own mind, but you still get from one place to the other.
Jesus Christ. That scared the shit out of me.
I find it hard to assess the movie in a way because it is so plain in many ways. It's also kind of almost ridiculous in the cultural repertoire. It is like so in your face. It is in some sense like not at all sophisticated. A movie where you have lovers that are called Adam and Eve is almost ridiculous. So this is like the primordial couple. And then of course, Adam and Eve, what was their sin? They were biting into something. So here we have these vampires who are Adam and Eve, and their sin is that they bite people, or at least they did so in the past. So that is like almost too much. It is almost stupid. And a lot of other cultural references are of that nature. So for example, when Adam goes to the hospital, then he has a name tag as a doctor and he's called Dr. Faust and similar things. And to my mind, you kind of, when you watch it, you are maybe a little bit ambivalent whether you should think that this is just pathetic or that it is really ingenious.
Night from Paris to Detroit, is that correct? Wonderful. Name of Fibonacci.
I think it is kind of ingenious, and it involves a kind of self-criticism because these two vampires, they've lived so long and they think they have all this amazing experience, but their experience is in fact quite limited in the sense that it is just the experience of the sort of Western canon. There's nothing Eastern or nothing sort of outside of this quite standard Western canon in the movie. And even where they live kind of delineates that space. So he's in Detroit, she's in Tangier, and kind of, that's like the limits of Western culture, the US and Europe, and then kind of the Mediterranean, and that's it. But of course they think they know it all, but really the sort of know-it-all thing is always the same story about Einstein.
Einstein's theory of entanglement.
And so in the end, it is quite lovely and quite amusing that even if you have 3,000 years of human experience, in some sense, it can still come across as a sort of trite hit list. And really, if you were to explore the human experience further, there would be lots of more things to think about.
And along these lines, Jarmusch seems to be quite aware of all of that because despite all the accumulated culture, all this embeddedness in literature and music and thousands of years of these sorts of things, in the end, when the supplies, the good stuff, the blood runs out, they go back to biting people. And that's just the bottom line. I mean, all that other stuff melts away. They're on their own. There are no instruments left, no books left. They're on their own with their teeth and their need for blood, and that's what they do. And even if self-consciously Eve says before they bite this lovely couple in the end, we shouldn't do this anymore, we are better than that, she says that throughout the movie, they just go ahead because that's the only choice they have, even if it is, as she puts it, so 15th century. But here we are.
Adam, really? So fucking 15th century.
There are two other vampires in the movie. One of them is Eve's sister, and she is kind of your uncultured vampire. So she's like this relative that you hope isn't going to come around to visit, but she does. And so one day she is in front of their doorstep, and that even is kind of announced in the movie because everyone else keeps having dreams of Ava. Her name is almost identical to Eve's name, so Eve and Ava. And Ava is the version that is not sophisticated. So she's still, she's not a vampire like in Nosferatu, and she's not a scary person. In the end, she is, because she bites someone, and then they say, well, she drank Ian. That was a guy that she was going out with. She's really the contrast, as they present it, is just between someone who is sophisticated in their artistic tastes and someone else who just wants to hang out and go out to a club and dance and have fun. So that's Eve's sister.
We are in Detroit.
Yeah!
No.
Adam's gonna take us out.
No, Adam is not going to take you out.
And then there is another important character in the film, Christopher Marlowe, who is this poet who presumably was involved in some literary scandal with Shakespeare. And presumably he wrote something that was maybe passed off as Shakespeare's own writings. So that is a big theme in the movie, that these vampires maybe are artists that sometimes produce some artwork which then human beings claim they have produced. So presumably Adam also wrote some sonata for Schubert, and Marlowe wrote apparently several plays that are considered Shakespeare's work. And he lives in Tangier, where also Eve lives, and he has connections to the French doctor, which is where they get the blood in Tangier. And he in the end drinks contaminated blood and he dies. And that whole theme of whether you drink blood that is contaminated or quote unquote the good stuff is presented kind of as similar to like today, maybe some hipster people will kind of not have whole milk, but skim milk or almond milk or soy milk or whatever. So they come across as just sort of really, really health conscious. But then eventually you realize, well, that is a very different matter.
Since you mentioned Ava, the party girl vampire, I mean, she's your typical nightmare of the unannounced family visit, and it's branded like that from beginning to end. And of course, it ends in the death of Adam's only non-vampire friend. That theme of the constant threat of intrusion into this cultured life, which is really a fragile life, as it turns out. It's so cliche in so many ways, but there's always the element of fun, and it's not as if Jarmusch wouldn't know. So that makes for a nice tension throughout, I think.
Yeah. When Ava drank Ian, so when she bites this guy that is the only human friend of Adam, and they go to a nightclub together, and then they come back at night, and then Ava promises, to go to bed soon and so on, but in the morning it turns out that she killed Ian. And then Adam and Eve kick her out of the house, and they need to get rid of the body. And then they talk about, how they used to do it in the olden days in London, when you could still just throw the bodies, in the river, because there were so many anyway, apparently. So they have to get rid of the body, and then they have to leave Detroit, and they have to board a plane. And that's also one of these moments where traveling is presented as sort of what drains you so much, literally like draws the lifeblood out of you. And the big problem with traveling is that you cannot take blood on an airplane. So when they arrive in Tangier, they are incredibly exhausted because they haven't been drinking in 2 nights. They take 2 night flights. They, of course, always only awake at night. And when they arrive at Tangier, then they find their friend Christopher Marlowe almost dead because he drank this contaminated blood, and he only has very, very little left of the good stuff from the French doctor. So they kind of survive on that for a little bit until they then decide to, go 15th century and bite this lovely young couple. But then the ending of the movie leaves very much open what's going to happen next. Are they just going back to being non-civilized vampires, or are they going to find a new arrangement where they have some deals with people in the hospital?
You're looking awfully pale there, Dr. Caligari.